Hey kids, I'm Katie. Welcome back for another week at Kids Life. We're in the middle of a series called Jesus Says, where we're looking at one of Jesus' most famous teachings, the Sermon on the Mount. So far, we've talked about how blessing means that God is with us. Last week, we talked about being salty and lit, meaning that we show and tell people about God's love. This week, we're going to finish up the first part of Jesus' sermon. After this week, Jesus is going to tell us exactly what it means and looks like to be his follower. But Jesus started off his sermon with one very clear message. He did not come to get rid of the law and the prophets. He came to fulfill them. Now, do you know even what I mean about the law and the prophets? I'm talking about the first part of the Bible, the Old Testament. People call it the Old Testament because it's one great big history book that talks about the old times. The first part begins with creation, the first humans, and then specifically talks about the Israelites. Now, you've heard of those guys before, the Israelites, right? God's chosen people. Well, in the first part of the Old Testament, God gives the Israelites all sorts of laws to follow. Laws that helped them obey God and then also to show others what God is like. Then the story continues and we get to the prophets. Now the prophets were like fortune tellers, but without the spooky voices and the crystal balls. And God spoke directly to the prophets. The prophets would tell the Israelites what God wanted to say to them. And they also would tell about a future Messiah, one who would come to save them all. Now, there were these other people that I'm sure that you've heard of, and they were called the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were accusing Jesus of not, following all of the rules. They were saying that he didn't respect or follow the law, and he was just, trying to throw it all away. But listen to what Jesus said in Matthew 5, starting in verse 17. He said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish," that means to get rid of, "the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." Jesus wanted to be very clear that he was a strong supporter of God's law. He was living by it every single day, and he said that we shouldn't set apart even a little bit of it. We should follow all of the law all of the time. But Jesus was also setting up another idea that he would repeat over and over again while he was teaching. Following the law isn't just about what happens on the outside. It isn't just about going to church every time or listening to your parents, even though those are really good things. To truly follow the law, to truly follow God, something has to happen in our hearts. Sometimes we think about our hearts as just the muscle in our chest that pumps blood throughout our body, or it's just that thing that helps us to fall in love. But Jesus, when he was talking about our hearts, he was talking about the deepest, most inner parts of us, the thing that drives us to make decisions, both good and sometimes bad. Jesus doesn't want people who just follow the rules to look cool. That's what the Pharisees did. The Pharisees just wanted to look good when other people were looking at them. They wanted people to think how good their deeds were and think how awesome they were. But remember that every good thing in the entire world was created so that people would praise and worship God, not the Pharisees. Jesus really cares about our hearts. He wants our hearts to be healthy. He knows that if our hearts are healthy, then we will do what is right and will obey and follow God. And Jesus did fulfill the law and the prophets like he said he would. He didn't get rid of anything, but he fulfilled the law by being the only human ever to never break any rule. He never sinned. And he fulfilled the prophets by being that Messiah that would save the world. Only Jesus saved the world in a way that was different than most expected. He did it by dying on a cross. Because Jesus knew that we would always struggle to follow the law until he sacrificed himself for us. And Jesus, he wants to give us a new heart, a heart that loves to follow him. Over the next few weeks, you'll see just what that means. But today, just remember, Jesus cares about our hearts and wants us to follow him from the inside out. And now you're going to break into groups to talk about that. See you later.